In this video, I'll be giving an overview or an introduction to internal family systems therapy as a model to work with our emotions. Internal family systems is about the idea that whatever emotion we experience, this is not us experiencing the emotion, but a part of us experiencing the emotion. There's this idea that within us are, you can think of them as individuals, so people with their own convictions, thoughts, assumptions, experiences, feelings, and so on. And these, our emotional reactions are the interactions that are happening between those people and those people as a result of the circumstances we're currently experiencing, as well as past experiences that have allowed them to build up certain defense mechanisms in order not to re-experience certain trauma or certain negative experiences based on our past. So the key idea is that there are parts to us. These are the people that we consider or we refer to as parts. And you may have actually experienced this on like an intuitive basis. You say, I'm not sure about this. A part of me thinks, a part of me feels. So that kind of language is, to many of us, natural in how we address the emotions that we're experiencing. We address the feelings that we have. And thinking of our emotions as belonging to parts of us allows us to compartmentalize those emotions, not to dismiss them, not to isolate them, not to inhibit them, but to recognize that there's more to us than the emotion that we're experiencing. There's more to us than a thought that we're having. We can have a thought and we can have other thoughts that work in collaboration with this thought. And thinking of them as parts or as people with a cluster of emotions, expectations, thoughts, and so on, allows us to have conversations within with those parts and to notice the dynamics between different different parts or different people. So, for example, there could be a part of us that is apprehensive. It is feeling afraid of a certain experience, a certain outcome. So it may self-sabotage in not getting us to work on something specific. Let's say I want to start a business. There's something within me that's inhibiting me from starting the business. I actually experienced this in creating this very course. I was inhibiting myself in many ways, and I'll explain how I managed to overcome this. But this inhibition is fear of a specific outcome, and then that part of me prevents me from taking action. But by recognizing that there's more to me, and there's a way for me to work with that part, I'm able to help it not to resort to that emotion, not to resort to that way of protecting me from a certain outcome. Okay, but there's also times where there's conflict between parts, where one part has the impression that another part is weak, and so it starts to bully it, not out of malice. This is a really important point when it comes to internal family systems. All parts of us have good intentions, and like I said, there's nothing in you that's against you. So all the emotions are trying to support us. All the parts have the genuine intention to help us as a whole human. But sometimes there's conflict, there's tension between parts because one part resorts to a certain emotion based on certain convictions, certain assumptions, certain beliefs, and it thinks that other parts are resorting to other emotions that are not as effective, as supportive as they think. So Internal family systems is a way to allow the parts to work together to achieve the best results for us as a whole. Now, we also need to make a distinction between something that is known as the self, which is not technically it's not the same as parts. It's a special or unique kind of part, and we experience it in a different way. The parts, they can get emotional, they can get triggered, and a trigger is usually recognizing a pattern that we've previously experienced, and so we resort to it in a defensive way because we do not want to re-experience a certain experience, or we don't want to be exposed, we don't want to be vulnerable in the same way we were in a previous experience, in a past experience. So the self does not have triggers. The self is actually very calm, collected, wise, confident. It's the part of us that is never damaged or tarnished by any life experience, and it is able to extend support to other parts. But what tends to happen, so in a healthy human being, the self is in control and it's facilitating the interactions of the parts. In an unhealthy human being, in a dysregulated human being, and I don't mean this I don't say this in a bad way or to offend any individual, but where there are emotional challenges, we tend to be emotionally dysregulated, or our nervous system is dysregulated, which is what I'm referring to here. But so, and someone who is dysregulated, who is wrestling with emotions, what tends to happen is that the parts, they sideline the self. They say, we do not trust you to take the right action. Maybe a part of you is aggressive, it's in fight mode, and it thinks of yourself as being too weak. It's too calm. This should not be the way we handle this situation. So the self is sidelined, and the parts take control over our emotional life. Ideally, what we want to do is we want to gain the confidence and trust of our parts, so that they're willing to work with the self, so that the self is in control and they are facilitating what the self recognizes as the best approach for us to take. Think of the parts as being your friends and having good intentions towards you. They want what's best for you, but they may resort to certain emotions, certain reactions that are not ideal, but they come from a good place. And by working with the parts, we are able to allow them to recognize better approaches to the challenges and issues that we face. And at times, the parts are reluctantly playing a role because they feel like they have to. They think like, I really have to protect this person, this whole human, and so I have to be aggressive. I have to fight. I have to be on high alert because this person is vulnerable. I'll get to a few really important points in a bit as it relates to the role, like the specific roles of the parts. But there are key types of parts that I want to talk about, and this is talked about in IFS literature, which is the protective parts come in two roles: manager role and firefighter role. Ultimately, these protectors, they do not want us to feel emotional overwhelm, and so they try to regulate emotions, but not in the most ideal way. Managers, they tend to suppress other parts known as exiles. An exile is a part of us that's experiencing an emotion, that the protectors are not comfortable with. So managers tend to suppress exiles. Firefighters tend to resort to extreme emotions or behaviors in order to not experience uncomfortable emotions. So resorting to drugs, resorting to alcohol, resorting to extreme addictions, maybe even cutting as well. These are things that the firefighter resorts to in order not to experience intense negative emotions. And sometimes the fear of the possibility of intense negative emotions is what leads to these extreme and often addictive behaviors. So managers, they tend to suppress emotions. Firefighters tend to distract from emotions. But ultimately, there are parts of us, the exiles, that have something to say, something to express, and they're not given the opportunity to express themselves. The, internal family systems as an approach to therapy is very non-coercive, and it works with the parts. It respects the parts. It appreciates the role they're trying to play, but then it asks them, do you mind if you were to play another role? Are you willing to reconsider some of your assumptions, whether it's about the person, whether it's about other parts, whether it's about the situation that we're in? If there's a sense of threat, is the threat as intense as we make it out to be? Without any judgment, without any coercion, without any like conflict or butting heads, we approach the parts with curiosity and compassion, and allow them to reconsider their approach or their assumptions. The role of the IFS therapist or the IFS facilitator is not ideally, in most situations, it's not to work directly with the parts, but to empower the self within the individual in order to become the person's facilitator and actually work with his or her own parts. So it's not sidelining the person's self in the same way that the parts may have done so, but to actually work with the self and figure out ways to regain the confidence and trust of the parts. And you'd be surprised by how accommodating and how cooperative your parts can be. Sometimes an emotion that you've struggled with for a long time, as soon as you understand the part, as soon as you acknowledge the role it's playing, as soon as you show it love, you show it support, the intensity of the emotion just drops. It disappears. So this is what I invite you to experience. Don't push the parts to do something or feel something, or to abandon a feeling immediately. You can actually invite it, you can encourage it, work with it, show it respect. Don't expect rationality out of the box, because for example, if I had a fear, and this is something that I experienced in preparing this course, I cared about the success of this course too much that I ended up in survival mode, in the freeze sort of approach. This is what I resorted to because I cared and I didn't want to see the course fail. Now, if you think about it rationally, does it make sense to want a course to succeed by not working on the course? Does that lead to success? It's not rational. And many of our fears, many of our emotional reactions are not rational. And to sort of taunt the part, or to judge it, to dismiss it as being irrational, or this doesn't make sense. What you're thinking is irrational. You need to be more rational. That kind of attitude toward our parts may get them to resist. And it's the same way we approach the parts is, or let's say, the way we approach our parts is very similar to how we approach other people. When we are dismissive of other people's behaviors, they tend to resist. When we say you're being irrational, that's not inviting, that's not encouraging someone to change their behavior. They actually tend to double down on their behavior. They tend to double down on their convictions because they perceive our attitude, our judgment as a threat that they try to protect themselves from. So being open, understanding, supportive, non-judgmental towards your parts, and saying, I really want to work with you, this is where we get the best results. This is a general overview of IFS. Again, there's a self that we try to empower, which is calm, confident, it's compassionate. It comes from a really good and emotionally stable place. It doesn't get caught up in triggers. It doesn't get caught up in reactions. When you react, you know that a part of you is taking over. What you want to do is you want to invite the self back again, and when the relationship between your parts and the self is improved, the parts are willing to step down very quickly. And this is where your emotional reactions are no longer intense, and so intensity goes down, the frequency of triggers and negative emotions goes down, as well as the duration. You're able to quickly bounce back. You get frustrated with someone, but it's not that intense. It doesn't happen that often, and it doesn't last for that long. You go back, you come back to base. But this tends to happen when the parts are trusting the self, and when they act out or when they want to take over, they say, actually, you know what? This is not my role. I will support the self in whatever role it chooses for me to play. And so I've covered the different types of parts, being the manager, firefighter, and exile, but also the role that they are playing, the emotion that they resort to in order to achieve your well-being or your survival, your well-being, your capacity to thrive. Sometimes the part is focused exclusively on survival because that's the mode it's in, and it's not able to even think about you thriving. I would rather, this is coming from the part, I would rather you not experience rejection than you experiencing abundant success. And so that's when a part becomes an obstacle to our success, to us thriving, because it has prioritized survival over everything else. But when you remind the part that actually I'm not under threat, maybe rejection is not a bad thing, failure is a way for us to learn from our experiences in order to achieve greater success, and you get the part to actually believe in it, and it buys into it, then you're able to get negative emotions out of your way. And not only that, the parts and the emotions, they, instead of becoming hurdles on your way, they become guardrails that reduce the risk in your life. They're not in the way. They just support you in achieving or reaching the destination that you want to reach. This is a basic overview, and we'll actually apply IFS into or for the goals you want to achieve, the problems you want to address, and the emotions that you're currently wrestling with. I'll see you in the next video.